Another very important chapter in these circumstances, international relations. The 24th of February last, Ukraine, an independent, recognized European country, was invaded and aggressed by Russia. What should France do? How far should France go to help Ukraine? Emmanuel Macron.
Well, first of all, I think you're quite right in mentioning first what's happening here in Europe and the fact that war is raging once again on the continent. The times are very serious indeed. Russia has decided to strengthen its offensive over the next few hours, next few days. There'll be an increased offensive on eastern Ukraine, on the Donbass, on Mariupol, and this will lead to human disasters, as we've already witnessed in a number of cities. France and Europe, as we've been doing from the very beginning, must support Ukraine, support to resist, to give Ukrainians defensive equipment and fighting equipment to make sure that Kiev doesn't fall. We have to also support them financially by also welcoming the Ukrainians, the 5 million Ukrainians which have left their country and gone across the country.
Should we go further?
Well, look, I think we need to do more today and to stay that course. And we must make sure, as I've been trying to do from the very beginning, that there is no escalation and that the war doesn't spill over. We have, therefore, to tighten our grip with the Allies and the Europeans, and we need to have other countries on board, which is why I've been speaking with China, with India, with the Gulf states, to make sure that everyone understands that the choices being made by Russia is a disaster for Ukraine, of course, but also for Russia itself. And that's why Europe is so important. A strong Europe, a Europe that can influence, a Europe that is strong on defense with a number of its countries, such as France, which is why we, over the last 5 years, have invested to have a strong army and armed forces in line with the budget set in the White Paper. But we also want to make sure that this will ensure our safety and security over the long run, because we are no one's vassals. But we must also bring Russia back to reason, first introduce a ceasefire and then release Ukraine.
Back to the European Union. I don't think you have the same vision on what the European Union must be. We'll come to that in a moment. Exactly the same question for you, Marine Le Pen. Should we help more Ukraine and deliver weapons to it? Go further.
Let me start by addressing my solidarity and my absolute compassion vis-à-vis the Ukrainian people, and we're doing this in front of millions of viewers. Russia's invasion and attack on Ukraine is unacceptable. And Mr. Macron, the efforts you have made to try, on behalf of France, to come up with ways and means to secure peace, your efforts deserve our support, clearly. Should we help Ukraine? Of course. Humanitarian aid? Of course. Financial aid? Yes, of course. Defense equipment? Yes, of course. Needless to say, as you well know, Louis Alliot, mayor of Perpignan, traveled as far as the Polish border and brought back to France refugees, women, children, senior citizens, brought them back home to Perpignan to keep them safe. Poland now has 3 million Ukrainian refugees on its soil. I sounded the alert many times. But we need to be careful. Delivering weapons to Ukraine could turn France into a co-belligerant. That is the concern. I agreed with all of the sanctions taken against Russian oligarchs and banks, but the only sanction that I disagree with is is the ban on imports of Russian oil and gas, because I don't think that is the right method. I don't think that is what will hurt Russia. But I do believe it'll hurt the French people very much, and I do believe that blocking such imports will have unintended consequences. And I hear that negotiations will begin after France loses the presidency of the EU. But the consequences will be cataclysmic, not just on private citizens, but also businesses. So I believe that we cannot fall on our swords, simply hoping that this will hurt Russia financially. Russia can just sell its oil and gas to other countries. So that was the only caveat that I expressed. But I do have one fear, a long-standing fear of our country, but also of other major powers across the world. I am concerned that this will throw Russia into the arms of China, that they will become such close allies in the future, that they will turn into a superpower, both economically, monetarily, maybe even militarily. This could be a huge risk for the West, for Europe, and for France. Those are my caveats. These are the concerns that I expressed. I sounded the alert on both these issues because, once again, I believe that we live in a complex world, and under the circumstances, we need to look to the future, both in the medium and long term, so that we don't solve problems today in ways that will hurt our future.
Title 42.
The day the war stops, will you lift sanctions against Russia, and we French will be able to consider Vladimir Putin as a fully fledged partner like any other?
First of all, let me take note of what Madame Le Pen has said, which is in fact not what your party and your MPs are saying in the European Parliament. Protecting, when we're talking about protecting Ukrainians here in our country, or protection and assistance to Ukraine, financial help, you opposed it. Just look at the votes, the count. Incidentally, what you've just said is exactly the opposite of what historically you have always said. I believe you were one of the first European political leaders in 2014 to recognize the result of the referendum in Crimea. I think since World War II, basically, we've no longer gone along with forced annexation in Europe, especially when Vladimir Putin himself had said that everything was going to his tune. Why am I saying this? Because you are, in fact, in Russia's grip. In 2015, you, madam, took out a loan with the first Czech Russian bank, which is close to the authorities, and you reworked it. I mean, all of this is fact and well known. Working with a number of people who were directly related and involved in the war in Syria. So you're not talking about other leaders, but just about your banker when you mentioned Russia. So obviously, when there are brave decisions to make, neither you nor your representatives are in attendance. And it's hardly surprising that 5 years ago, Russia interfered in the campaign to destabilize me, and it's hardly surprising that you were a bit unsure what to say, because you're just not going to be able to operate to defend French interests because of how they're tied with yours.
Marine Le Pen, you can respond to what Emmanuel Macron said. You depend on the Russian power of Vladimir Putin.
Emmanuel Macron has access to all of the information provided by French intelligence services, and you know fully well that this is wrong. You know fully well that I am a completely free woman. I am a patriot. I have been a patriot my whole life, and I defend France and the French people, no matter the circumstances. I tracked down a tweet dating back to November 9th, 2014. I support a free Ukraine, says the tweet, that is subject to the influence of neither the US nor the EU nor Russia. That was my position. It was the same for Iraq in 2003, and the same for Ukraine now.
But a Ukraine without Crimea, madam?
We'll get to that. Crimea did not pose that many problems, and I remember that you hosted with much fanfare Mr. Putin in Versailles.
I hosted a head of state, not my banker.
In 2017, you hosted Mr. Putin at Brégançon, your summer vacation, and on that occasion, you said the exact same thing that I'm saying today. On that occasion, you said that Russia should shore itself up to the EU once again. You said that Europe should spread all the way from Lisbon to Vladivostok.
But I'm still not saying anything else.
What I'm saying is that that posture is not dignified.
But am I saying something that's wrong? Is it wrong?
And let me speak to the substance of what you said.
I'm not coming back on anything or reneging on anything. I'm recognizing that that Russia has its full place in the European security architecture. But what have I said? Is it wrong?
Yes, Mr. Macron, it is both wrong and rather dishonest to tell you the truth. Let me explain why.
Good, tell us.
Why was I forced to take out a loan?
So you took one out then?
And that's something that everybody knows, is because no French bank agreed to give me a loan. And at the time, you found it so outrageous that you enacted a piece of legislation on the Bank of Democracy, which you never actually implemented. Why didn't you, Mr. Macron? Why didn't see that effort through? That Bank of Democracy initiative, you knew that this would fill a democratic gap, whereby banks get to decide which political party to support and which not to. Mr. Macron, let me tell you something.
Look, 2015 was when you took that loan out. You still haven't paid it back. So it's not about the Democracy Bank or anything. Other candidates in this election, such as Monsieur Zemmour, didn't go out and take a loan out in Hungary or elsewhere.
They found a bank that would loan them the money in France.
So, okay, it's not the same then.
It takes a while to pay back a loan. And let me tell you, I come under the scrutiny of the Campaign Oversight Office, and they are extremely stringent in their controls. And there's something else I want to say to you, Mr. Macron. There are millions of French people who, over the past 5 years, have gone to the bank to get loans, to buy a car, or to mortgage their house. They don't owe you a thing. All they want to do is repay their loans, just like me.
And me. But as you said, they go and take out a loan in a French bank. They don't go out abroad to get a Russian bank related to the authorities for millions and then not pay it back.
Mr. Macron, I simply cannot let you say that.
Look, you said it yourself.
We repay our loan every single month under the supervision of the Campaign Oversight body.
But look, you still haven't paid it back.
It is true that we are a political party with not a whole lot of resources, but there's honor in that.
I'm not calling your honor into question. There's nothing wrong with that. But there is a dependency link that there is there.
The only dependence that I feel is the fact that I have to repay my loan, Mr. Macron.
But it wasn't a bank, any old bank in Russia. It was a bank close to the authorities. So just admit to it.
Mr. Macron.
Look, so many of your choices can be explained by this link, by this relationship. I'm not holding this up against you. I'm just saying that other candidates with similar ideas to yours have not made the same choices, that they have found funding in French or European banks, that you made a choice that you were bound by and that you're imposed the constraints on your political choices.
That is simply not true. I said it before, I will say it again, this is simply not true.
Look, you're just saying wrong, but we're listening to you.
And I believe the French people know it.
I too have loans, like all of our fellow citizens, to buy a house or buy a car, to use your examples. But we have not gone and taken a loan out in Russian banks.
It's rather dishonest, Mr. Macron, to stop me from...
Look, I know you're unhappy with it, but it's a fact.
to stop me from getting a loan from a French bank and then blaming me for going abroad to get one there.
Honestly, did I stop you from getting a loan in a French bank in 2015?
Weren't you the Minister for the Economy back in the day?
Well, I wasn't Minister of Finance. I didn't have the banks. You know, no one did anything there.